Before we do intros, these are our communication channels. It's our custom in the Marquez community to go from left to right in the speaker's view. And so that means Benji is our fortunate victim to start. If you could tell us who you are and what's bringing you to the meeting, that would be great.
Hey, I'm Benji. I work at Astronomer. I recently became a PM here, focused on open lineage on the open source side of things, and Marquez is related to open lineage and the open source side of things. So mostly here to still just listen and learn and see what's going on.
Thank you. Next is Prachi.
Hi, I am a software engineer at Astronomer in the observability team. Yeah, great to be here.
Thank you. Great to have you. Next is Ross.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ross from the community team here at Astronomer, and I'm here to help.
Thank you. Next is Minkyu.
Hello, I'm Minkyu, and I'm software engineer at Astronomer. And, good to see you all always. Yeah.
Good to see you. Thank you. Next is Julian.
Hello, I'm Julian. I'm the project lead for Open Lineage, and I'm here to listen the updates.
Thank you. Next is Willy.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Willy. I'm the co-creator Marquez, but I don't know if others are aware, but I'm officially the project lead. Before it was Julian, now it's me, and so happy to take on that sort of badge of honor. And if you're wondering what this is behind me, this is from Ross. He's very crafty. So I did get a load of Marquez swag from him that he's done by hand. So just wanted to point that out. And that's pretty much it here. I know there's been a lot of work on the UI, so excited to see the demo from Peter.
Speaking of Peter, he's next.
Hey, I'm Peter. I work at Astronomer. I'm a Marquez contributor. Demoing UI today. A little bit last few months of changes, and excited to be here.
Excited to have you. Thank you for coming. Thank you all for coming. On the agenda today, we have some announcements. Willy kind of stole my thunder as far as one of those goes. And then we'll have an LFAI update, some recent progress to talk about there. Recent releases, there have been 2, and then the demo that we're all looking forward to, I'm sure. And then if there are any items for open discussion, we'll have some time for that. First up, I have some announcements to share. On February 3rd, as Willy mentioned already, he was voted the Marquez project technical lead in the Marquez Slack. So this was an exciting, but really not that surprising turn of events, because Willy has been leading the project for a long time now, but it was great to make it official. On February 9th, the LFAI and Data Foundation, and specifically their program for ML and AI projects like ours, conducted its annual review of the project, with Willy serving as the representative. And I think it went well, and we'll have some more information about that from Willy right now, actually.
Great. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so the annual review did take place on February 9th, but I think you failed to mention that it was like very early in the morning. I think it was like 6 a.m. or something like that. Just because the foundation is so distributed, this is sort of the time that works for everyone. And you also missed that while I was presenting, I was on 6 shots of espresso because I was just that tired. But it went really, really well. There was 2 projects that were providing updates. And we went through the growth that we've seen in the past year. We talked about sort of the sort of the changes in terms of how many committers and the star growth and everything like that, and also the major contributions that have been happening across different orgs. So really excited for that. Is that what the next slide is actually?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm also stealing the thunder of the next slide. So these are just some of the topics that we put together, and things like the adoption trend, which is I think really important for the community. What organizations are adopting Marquez? How are they? Which ones are deploying them to a production environment? The key thing for us though is really getting to that graduation stage. Marquez was one of the earlier adopters of LFAI in data. So for us, it's a very meaningful thing to graduate from the foundation. And I think when we left the when we finished the presentation, Ibrahim, who sort of runs those meetings, he was just sort of like, wait, you're pretty much there for graduation. So I think there's a follow-up in 2 months about us graduating, and I'm really, really excited about that. That's going to be a huge milestone for the project. And I think we need to do something exciting when that does happen. So we have 2 months to brainstorm the graduation, and I'm just realizing my laptop might die. But yeah, the next stage is really getting to the point where we graduate. But all I was doing was just presenting stats and work that has been done across the community. So even though I did present and I was the face, really there was a lot of work from everyone on the call, but also those that couldn't attend the community meeting. A lot of credit goes to them throughout the few years that Marquez has been part of the foundation. That's all I wanted to mention.
Okay, thanks. So please stay tuned for updates about our continued progress in the LFAI program. Since our last meeting, we've had 2 releases, 30.0 and 31.0. Our cadence is to release around the 15th. 30.0, the headlines here were changes to the API and the UI for the most part. We had a big performance upgrade to the API in 30.0, and there's an important resource that you should know about if you don't know already, and if you're thinking about upgrading to 30.0. In these 3 PRs, we dramatically improved the performance of storing and querying facets. There is a manual migration procedure that's required if your database has more than 100,000 lineage events in it. So we highly encourage all users to review the migration plan. And I realize this is a long URL, but this slide deck will be posted to the wiki. So, don't sharpen those pencils. Right? It'll be there. Also, we continue to improve the UI. We added a JSON preview of column level lineage in this release. We also added a soft delete option in the UI. So this adds an option to delete a data record with a dialog component and double confirmation. Thanks to all our contributors for their work on this release, including new contributor Per2. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, who contributed a Helm chart bug fix. As always, there were other bug fixes as well, and that's 30.0. 31.0, headline here, UI improvements. We added facet view enhancements. This is a dynamic component with the ability to navigate and search JSON, including expandable sections and clickable links. We also got highlighted paths based on display status of jobs and data sets based on the last 14 runs in the case of jobs, or let's see, the latest quality facets in the case of data sets, I believe. And it'll make more sense when we see the demo, but basically in the visual graph, what's highlighted is from the downstream to the upstream dependencies of selected nodes. And what's highlighted is based on the last 14 runs or the latest quality facets. But it'll make more sense when you see it. And finally, in our continued quest to make progress in the LFAI, we turned on an auto accessibility feature on graph nodes that's available in React. There were also some bug fixes to the API, spec, and the UI. So that's 31.0. And with that, I'll turn it over to Peter. Do you want to share your own screen?
Sure, I can share. Okay, so quick plug here. So before we get started looking at UI features, I really like this open in Gitpod feature that we have in the repo. It's really nice if you it gives you a VS Code instance in the cloud, and if you're not sure about what you can do with Open Lineage and you're worried about trashing your own kind of computer and Postgres instance, you don't have to worry about that. You can just do it in the cloud. You'll get an Open Lineage URL here at port 5000, and you just go to this /events, start posting things, and you can see it here in the UI that's also kind of pre-hosted for you. And this just inherits from our standard Docker Compose configuration that running locally would, but it's just automatically built in the cloud for you. So that's kind of what I'm going to be demoing from, about a lot of the features that we have done in the last two or 3 months. And a lot of the credit actually does go to Vlad, who started picking up a lot of these issues starting in November, I think, and has made kind of good progress getting in a lot of the features that we wanted to have after a period of kind of hibernation on the UI for a little bit. So the first thing we can look at is we have highlighting that Michael kind of was alluding to earlier, where we have this critical path highlighting, so you can see that these arrows are actually bold on the critical path. So we do some kind of recursive upstream, downstream path chasing for the currently selected node in the graph. And we'll kind of work just as you navigate and look at the graph and move around. So it's helpful to see kind of upstream, downstream dependencies in a visual capacity. One of the other things that we've done with this release is we've replaced entirely our old JSON display widget that we had here for a more robust kind of searchable component here. And one of the reasons we did this is because we had some users that use the length of Michael's PhD thesis as inspiration for how much data they wanted to post in Open Lineage events. And some Spark logical plans got pretty lengthy. So we wanted something that would consolidate some of the nested data here so that we wouldn't overwhelm a client's machine with hundreds of K of data all at once. So it's nicely formatted. The other thing that's nice about this is it's actually searchable as well. So if you're looking for a particular field, the JSON here is searchable. It will auto expand everything for you if it finds something in a nested path. One thing we'll look at fixing is this root configuration, which I think is a little confusing to some users because it's built in from the client itself, not from any Open Lineage event. So we'll make an update to that. But so this is kind of across the board in the project, anywhere we display JSON. So whether it's here in facets for this particular data set, here in the version history of that facet. So if we only have one version here right now, but some of our other data sets I think have more versions even in our dummy data. We also have facet information for column level lineage. I think in our data here, I think this is the only data set that has this, but it's searchable and we can look at our column level lineage here. I think in the future we'll look to enhance this and put in some more like features around this rather than just kind of dump a raw object here. But this is kind of where we're getting started with column level lineage, as it's kind of a newer feature to Marquez overall. And then I think the last thing that we have the lineage events viewer as well, and we have some old events here, but again, we have our updated JSON viewer, and you can kind of dig through all of the lineage events, and this is paginated as well, so you can kind of go back and forward through your history of open lineage events, and you get some kind of information about like the run centric model. So these are complete events, these are start events. So that's kind of the full life cycle of these events. And I think that's all I had for today for UI updates. I guess there is one more thing. We have this delete functionality. Michael talked about it a little bit, but it allows us to do this and confirm removal. We get kicked out of here, and you can see there's actually only 3 now, so I can go from 3 to 2. And again, this is a cloud instance, so now I'm down to 2, so I'm not really deleting anything that's meaningful, or else it's also RC data. So that's kind of how the delete functionality works.
Is this the only place that we can delete items from? You can't do it from like the datasets tab directly.
So you can do it from the datasets tab.
Oh no, I mean like on the side, like the sidebar tab, like not in the graph view. Or can
Oh yeah, we can't quite do that yet. It's also, you can of course do it from the API, which if you want to do it programmatically, but that's kind of where we're getting started with this delete functionality.
I think Benji, that's a good point to make. So on the sidebar, when you look at the view of the data sets or jobs, it'd be nice to know, it'd be nice something to pop up and say, what can I do? How can I interact with this data set? Can I delete it? Can I view it? Can I look at the lineage? Can I look at the column level lineage? Right, and so that way it's all central. Right now, they're in different locations. So it'd be nice to aggregate that and just show the user, hey, this is what you can do with the object.
Yep. But I think that's about it. So for this demo, so I can stop sharing.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for referring to my PhD thesis. And yeah, I can confirm that the length is inspiring. I think sleep is what it inspires. Regret is something it definitely inspired in me. Anyway, so thank you, Peter. And next on the agenda is open discussion. So anyone have any topics they want to raise? Questions?
Well, I guess if everyone's going to be quiet, I have more questions around the delete data set functionality and just kind of aggregating what we can do where, and if there was any thought of deletion in other places on the roadmap, or if this was just like a, hey, let's see what this looks like for now.
I think it's the latter, right? It was first exposed in the API. It was one of the most highly requested API features, and then we added it in the UI where we thought it made the most sense. As you're viewing the metadata for the data set and job, you can either view the location for a job, and then also delete it. Same thing for a data set, you can now delete it. But I think we're just kind of like taking baby steps to figure out where all these different features make sense. Yeah. Let's see.
I think I could give an example of when this is useful. For example, if someone renames a job, let's say you run your Airflow instance and you rename your DAG, and then suddenly you're going to have the old DAG showing in Marquez and the new DAG, right? So the delete functionality is useful to delete the old jobs if Marquez is not aware that it has been a rename, right? And you just see that as two different jobs and deleting the old jobs. Things to pay attention to: if the same job is still running and you delete it in Marquez, the next time it's going to run, it's going to be created again, right? Because Marquez will see it as being seen. So, and Marquez keeps track of all the changes, so it's more of a deleted flag. So when you delete a dataset or a job in Marquez, you keep the history, right? So in the database, you'll have the history of all the previous version and the fact that it's been deleted and so on. So it's kind of like interesting to think about the nuances of this functionality. And same thing for dataset, right? Like, so if suddenly you rename your table, you change your query, you rename a table, and Marquez is not aware of it, or you decommission a database, you can go and delete things. But if something writes again to that table, is going to be recreated, obviously, and you'll see that history in Marquez.
Yeah, the other thing as well is there's a namespace deletion. So one example, if you're just experimenting with Marquez, you could create a namespace, temporary or like experimental. So you could just send all the metadata to that namespace and just delete the namespace. But as Julie mentioned, it's all flag based. So, Marquez will not remove those connections on the back end or relationships. So there might be, maybe as a follow-up, we do a forced delete, just like, initially we do a soft delete. But if you really want to delete that metadata, it might make sense to just add a flag to say, forcefully delete this metadata so Marquez doesn't keep track of it long term, especially if it's just data you don't really care about. Yeah, and Michael, that's a great issue to talk about.
Yeah, so while we're talking about the UI, I thought this might be an opportunity to look at a really interesting issue. There have been a number of interesting issues just in the last few days in the project. But this is great. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go over it. I know I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's put together a Figma proposal with a flow, which I think is amazing. I think some usability in terms of actually. Do you want to click on that link just briefly, Michael?
Yeah, let me see if I can.
Yeah, there you go. So we don't. I know he might be discussing this next community meeting, but I think it's just great to make people aware, to start providing some feedback around usability. So on the left side, since we have a dark mode, it's very hard to see some of the icons on the left side. So just making them pop a little bit more by adding that just some color would be great. And especially for the paths on the lineage graph, right now they're white, they're just made bold, which is a subtle change that might not be obvious. So another color might make sense. In this case, it looks like orange or something orange is being proposed. I think that's a good idea. And then there's a few other things as well. But
yeah, just seemed worth like pointing out, like a really cool issue. Just yeah, just added.
Yeah, it's great to see suggestions like this from the community.
mhm.
All right. Well, any other items for discussion today? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. And
Oh, actually, I think Bruno just
Bruno
joined.
just joined.
Yeah. Kind of don't want to leave him hanging, right? So he joins and everyone's leave.
Hello. Yeah, hello, Bruno. I think you just got connected, so maybe you didn't hear.
No, exactly. I was just connecting. Good evening from Europe, everybody.
Oh wow, welcome, Bruno.
Welcome.
Thank
We're
you,
in Europe.
guys.
Mhm.
In France, in a town called Grenoble, near the Alps.
In the Alps, okay.
I used to
Julian,
live there. Yeah,
Sorry?
I used to live there.
Do
Near me.
you?
Yeah.
When did you move?
2007. So a while
Okay,
ago.
we may have crossed. I arrived here in 2003.
Yeah, I was there, I think 2004, maybe 2003, 2004 to 2007.
mhm. But
Oh,
well, welcome. Maybe just a quick intro. So we know you're from France. You know, you may have bumped into Julian at one point at a cafe.
yeah. Who
uh,
knows? It's quite Grenoble is a small town, so it's possible. Do you want me to go for a small introduction of myself?
yeah, just maybe
Yeah.
why you're here. Have you used
Yeah,
Marquez?
so I'm 20. I have 20 years of experience in BI. And I discovered Marquez looking for a lineage tool, so via open lineage. And I'm pretty curious about the potentiality of the tool. Data lineage is extremely important, and when it comes to BI, there's almost no tool that is able to do the job, because the BI tools are not at all industrialized, meaning that their level of for people that comes from the programming world, they lack essential functionality like documentation, like versioning, and so on and so forth. And so it's really tough to do introspections on those tools, to properly manage the data and the reporting solution that we may deliver to our customer. So Marquez attracted my curiosity, and here I am to see what is the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, so you initially said open lineage. So you discovered open lineage, and then you kind of looked at the different backends that support the standard, and then you're like, oh, Marquez looks like a interesting lineage tool that can be used for BI. Was that the path?
Yeah, exactly. I was looking for tools. I find openlineage.io website, and in there they talk about the installation of Marquez, and this is the way I discovered Marquez.
Mhm.
And right now I'm doing some testing to see how far it can be pushed.
I see. Yeah, the BI tooling component. I know, Julian, there was discussion about supporting that as a facet or making that part of Open Lineage. Do we know where that facet lies or that discussion?
So we haven't reached a conclusion yet. So we have a couple of meetups coming up. And part of the plan is to open up that discussion to how do we model BI, like dashboards, for example, and that applies also to logical views in databases in Open Lineage. And to make that extend the spec to cover those use cases. So it's not, there's no conclusion yet on that discussion. So we have a meetup, I think, in a couple of weeks, and another one at the end of the month during Data Council. And the goal is to have more discussions around this to get more community input
Right.
on those items.
Now that doesn't. So that's sort of more on the edge side, right? With BI tooling, with Marquez, you will have a lot of lineage from sort of the ingestion point. So whether you're grabbing data from a third party and storing it in S3 and running ETL jobs, whether in Spark or Airflow, and into your warehouse. So you'll be able to get the lineage there and then connect your BI tool to your warehouse and see what tables you're using. But to the actual dashboards and stuff, that is what we're currently what's being discussed, because you want to be able to pinpoint, hey, I pushed a pipeline, it's been running for a week, and oh, by the way, my dashboards are now incorrect for some reason. Whether that's reality or whether that's completely wrong because the data has been corrupt. It's very hard to understand when those issues were introduced. So with Marquez, you do get lineage, but underneath there's a versioning logic. So all your metadata is versions, all the job runs are tied to dataset versions as well as job versions. So the versioning layer is what's fairly unique on the Marquez side, with a very powerful API that allows you to query datasets and jobs and ingesting metadata in Open Lineage. So my question to you would be, what are some things you want to solve with Lineage? Maybe we start there.
Yeah. The lineage has become important because of keywords and trends like governance today. But from a pragmatic and from a pragmatic point of view, it's always important to have a tool to do impact assessment. And as mentioned before, those tools, such as tool, do not exist. Not even, I mean, Marquez, there is all the capacity to extract the metadata by itself. But today we lack even tools that are able to easily build a lineage by yourself. And the API interface, I started using the API interface to build lineage by hand, to start understanding the logic of the product. And even I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And when you're developing and you're doing some SQL queries in our intermediary step, it's pretty easy to do a copy and paste of your job while you're programming, with the piece of code indicating the source, the target, and so having easily a documentation, because it would be essentially really a copy and paste step. Whereas when you go for, I have seen in a previous meeting, there were people from Colibra. Well, it's mess. that there is no way that you can do that with easily with Colibra. The UX is of Colibra that it's simply not feasible. Not feasible. Not. I mean, it's feasible, but from a user experience, it's a mess. If you have to insert the data, it's too costly. And not to mention, but this is my crazy side profile. We could even think for BI on the other way around. So you build by metadata the lineage, and you generate the code from the lineage. The transformation from Marquez itself. So you invert totally the logic of the product.
I never thought about that way.
And it would be powerful because there is something that I mean, I just discovered 1 week ago, so I'm pretty in the phase of brainstorming. But I told myself if it would be feasible for even complex scenarios, this would save a lot of money to companies who today they start with a BI solution and they can't get rid of it because they have to redevelop everything with other professional because they with other expert. Whereas if you have a meta tool that is able to generate the code, for example, for ClickView and for Power BI, it's simply it would be simply great. All the loading of the data would be done, and then, well, yes, there would be some formulas here and there for because the BI tools have 2 layers, the ingestion layer plus a restitution layer, where you have what are called KPIs, and this I don't know how it could fit in Marquez, but for the generation of the ingestion part, I told myself it may be worth investigating.
It'd be interesting to hear what others say, but you're right. I mean, most of the jobs, if they're just in SQL, you don't necessarily need code. I mean, there's a lot of boilerplate to eventually run the SQL. So I've never thought about it in terms of what you are thinking of, but it's definitely possible. It sounds like a research paper type thing, but
well, it's not really a sequel, but you could do a parser. And for example, I was reading that for Click, they have their own parser of the code as an API. I just have seen it. I can provide you more details, but you from the SQL you can get the logic, and from the logic you can implement the code itself. But to be transparent, I was there to learn a little bit more from you. What is the philosophy of the product?
yeah. No, you joined at the right time because it's open discussion. We were giving some updates on the UI and previous releases, so you did join at a great time. So you want to know the philosophy of Marquez? And
yeah, exactly. How do you position yourself? I mean, I don't. I don't want to appear as the elephant in the room, meaning that I don't want to occupy too much room. You know, I'm Italian and I have tendency to do so. So please go for your way and I just listen.
No, That's quite all right, actually. This is a good discussion. It might make sense to maybe revisit the philosophy of Marquez as well. So when we originally started the project, so Julian is on the call, so we started the project at WeWork, and it was part of it was an internal open source project, so from day one. But we wanted to focus on APIs that were specific to jobs and data sets. A lot of what you saw, kind of what you brought up as well, Bruno, is you see when lineage is captured, there's a lot of infrastructure. Usually there's a graph database, but it's all very generic. You have to build entities and attach metadata. So for us, we wanted a completely shift in the other direction, have opinionated APIs around what does it mean to be a job. We want to capture the inputs and outputs of the job itself. We want to capture the description. We want to capture its location. So where it is in GitHub or in version control. And then same thing for data sets. We wanted to capture the fields. So that way, when you see the lineage graph, you're able to click on a data set and automatically see the schema. And it was all going to happen within the context of a run. So when a job runs, it's going to report its run state, its run args, details around its execution. And it was happening really at the time of execution, so in near real time, where before a lot of it was scraping. It would be, let me write this extractor or this scraper. I'm going to point it at a database. I'm going to pull it, and you'll never know really what was the job that modified that data set. So for us, the two entities, or the entity itself, was the job and its interface on how other teams or how other jobs interact with that job. It's through its data sets. Similar like an API. An API says, if you want to access my data, here's the contract. And very similar, we were saying a job is going to expose a contract through the data sets that it produces. Yeah. So Julian, feel free to fill in some things there. But
yeah,
the other one last thing is we wanted this to be very, very simple to run. So a database and an API, no Kafka, no Elasticsearch, none of that. So from day one, we wanted to make sure that it could just run in a very simple environment like Docker. But yeah, go ahead, Julian, if you have more to add.
Yeah, I wanted to add to this. So there's a very observability centric perspective to this, right? Because like Willy mentioned, right, other aspect of lineage is often scraping or like design lineage where people enter what the lineage is, or they scrape the database, or they do dataset to dataset lineage, but they don't understand how the transformation happens. So we really took a observability centric thing when you instrument the running transformations, right? So you can get a lot more metadata at that time, right? What was the version in source control? You know, what's the query profile or like performance aspect or cost aspect you can capture at this time, and really capturing metadata around the transformation itself, which is a job in Marquez, and metadata around the dataset and the lineage, and understanding that this dataset is derived from those datasets, but through this transformation that runs, and how long it takes, and does it work or fail? Where is it coming from in source control? So there's kind of this opinionated, you know, this is about observing what's actually happening, right? And kind of decided that the question of open lineage is like the only way we'd be able to do that, you know, boiling the ocean like everywhere, is to adopt this as a standard in the industry and create this standard where everybody exposes their lineage in a standard way that we can collect in some place like Marquez. And the Marquez storage is it keeps track of all the jobs, all the transformation of the data set, and it keeps track of all the changes as well. So it is a version storage. It keeps track of, you can see, Marquez knows how the lineage has changed over time. And if if the schema is now wrong in the data set, it's going to know what it used to be, and it's going to know what run or what job like change the schema. So this kind of interesting aspect. So there's a bit of a data reliability perspective on this as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No. One last thing I'll add to there, just because if you look at the path of open lineage, it really became a subset of the model that Marquez has. Marquez has all this versioning component, but then jobs, data sets, and runs. And that eventually became the open lineage standard with the ability to extend the standard through facets. So it was initially prototyped in Marquez and then eventually became its own project. And now it's part of the LFAI in data, which I think happened recently, right? Or not recently, but and then from there, there's an ecosystem that we wanted to build around how other frameworks can ingest or emit lineage metadata. So things like Spark, things like Kafka, things like data warehouses. It would be great if they all start emitting this open lineage format and allowing other components within your platform to start ingesting those events. And they know that, oh, if I receive this event, I know all the information I need to render the lineage. And you could do whatever you want with those events. Marquez just happens to have an opinion on how it's storing the metadata. But, one example, like, I work at Astronomer as well. We're ingesting those lineage events in our product. And we're building out some pretty cool features that we'll be announcing and talking about in the future that are not really specific to the lineage, but you could really build some cool products on top of the events that are coming in. So, okay, and Bruno, that's our philosophy. We kind of just gave you a roadmap or like a background, but hopefully that was helpful.
No, but it's really interesting, and I talked before about Colibra, but I've seen other data lineage tool like Data Galaxy, and they are all so complex. Whereas what I'm really liking about Marquez is the simplicity of it and of the logical model that is open lineage. And I think that it has a lot of potentiality. Then I have one question. Why did you start from the big data world, so Spark and so on? Is there a special
well, market? Yeah, if I was going to say it, it's, you look at what's being used in the industry and you want to provide the most impact right away. So Airflow was one of our first integrations. I think within the company, we were using Airflow at WeWork. And then you look at the industry, and there's a lot of companies, a lot of startups adopting Airflow, and that's continued to grow. So naturally you say, I want to focus on that target. Because if that's where you can learn the most, have the biggest impact. And currently Julian, you could talk more about this, but the AIP within an Airflow to have open lineage as a first-class citizen in the project. So that's been voted on and it's being worked on. And that's really what we want to do with other projects as well, like Spark and so forth.
Yeah, I would add to this that we also focus on the data warehouse. I think like with Marquez, initially the focus was the big very popular open source project like Airflow and Spark, where and Spark is more big data world, but also the relational data warehouse like Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, people using Postgres as well as part of this. And so that was kind of the core focus initially of Marquez, where like we started from in terms of instrumentation. And that's what we saw as being used the most in the industry, but we kind of came a bit from like the tech industry, which maybe is biased a bit toward big data, but the goal is to really get lineage from everything.
Yeah, I wish we had a better answer where we spent 1 month in research and realized, okay, this is what is going to unlock the power of Marquez, but no, it was really okay. We're using airflow, so that's what our analysts are using. So we should probably prioritize that.
A lot of people are using airflow.
I mean, that's the way it works. Usually, you have the opportunity, and so that's the way it works.
So are we going to see a demo from you, Bruno, of a BI tool like next month? Can we put you down?
On a BI tool, it will be, well, the point is that as I mentioned before, those tools lack a lot of introspection. So to make an extractor of metadata, it's I really today I don't see how it can be done. What could be done is we could discuss a little bit the element, the entities that would be needed to complement the present set of entities that are in the open lineage model and on the Marquez implementation. This is something that would be feasible.
That would be great. Let's make it a discussion item for a future meeting. I was just kidding. I mean, next month would be wonderful. Yeah.
So please.
No, I was just, it was a joke, but not really, because I think, as you can see, we were talking about this for 30 minutes and it feels like 3 minutes. I think it would be great to get your ideas down and, within like a lightning 2-3 minute discussion or your thoughts in a future Marquez community meeting, but also in open lineage as well, because that's really where a lot of the extension will happen. But how Marquez processes those BI specific facets would make a lot of sense for you to talk about. And that will drive a lot of discussion, because we've been waiting for someone, and I didn't know they would come from France to talk about BI and how that would make sense in lineage.
Yes, I'll be glad. I mean, to provide my tiny seeds, and but beware, I speak a lot, so beware. Don't give me too much space.
Okay. I'll make sure of that. But definitely chat as much as you can in our Slack channel. So if you're an open lineage Marquez, we could do a lot of this async. And
yeah, I have to ramp up on open lineage, to be transparent. I have to ramp up on open lineage to properly participate. Otherwise, I will like the first night I will send the dummy questions, which, by the way, was mentally okay. I was talking too much. So.
But that's quite right. Even though you don't know a lot about maybe open lineage, you're talking in the right way. That once you start, I think, understanding more what open lineage can do and unlock, I think you're gonna be talking quite a bit, which is gonna be a good thing. That's what we want.
Oh no, don't push me. Don't push me. Furthermore, I see there are plenty of other participants which for one reason or the other are in mute, and I don't want to take the scene.
Oh yeah, so what happened, Bruno, is we spent the first half hour of the meeting like discussing the items we have, and actually we were toward the end of the meeting when you joined. So that's why
okay,
like
because I mean
you.
yeah. So I was wrong, because I saw 11 Pacific time, and I thought that it was 8:30 Europe time, but I think so I'm wrong.
Yes. So we started at 8 your time then, I guess. And so that's why. So that's why, so we at the end of the meeting we have the open discussion section.
Yeah.
So that's why. So we don't.
So you're telling me I missed the part that was most interesting for me.
Yeah. So on the bright side, this call is recorded. So there was a
yeah.
nice demo of the UI. So you'll be able to watch it afterwards. So Michael will post this recording.
Well, so if it's open discussion, I will tell you one. I will make some question. I for the time being, the concept of facet is not clear to me. What it's meant to represent, facets.
Yeah, so I can take that one. And so the thing is we're almost on time, so then but we can follow up on the Slack as well. So the facet is meant as a very flexible mechanism to extend or specialize the spec. So the open lineage spec is really focusing on the core of lineage, the core spec, which is just defining there's a job, it's reading and writing to data sets, right? And it's recurring. So you will have runs of that job that read and write to those data sets. So that's the core of the spec. It's just capturing the lineage. And then on top of that, you can add facet to those entities, either at the dataset level, the job level, the run level. So a facet on the dataset can be the schema, for example, or it can be on the job. It could be what was the version in Git of that particular version of the job that ran, right? Or it could be how many rows were written in the output dataset. So all those can be facets. And so facet, one of the goals of the open lineage spec was to avoid having a monolithic spec where you have to define everything in a big document. So there's a core that's pretty small. And then you have facets, each are their own self-contained spec of metadata. So you could have a schema facet to define the schema of a table. You can have the code version facet that capture what's the version in Git, for example, or in something else if you're using SVN, something else. And we have a bunch of facets. There's a data quality facet, there's a column lineage facet, and they're all optional because different systems have different level of metadata. So that way you can make it optional. And it's also specialization because the Kafka topic will have a different schema than a table in a database. So you have the opportunity to use different types of facet, depending on the different type of transformation or tables. Like a SQL query will have a facet that contains a SQL. If you have a Spark job, you're not going to have this, but you're going to have the logical plan facet for the Spark job. So this is the mechanism. It's also great for enabling different parts of the community to contribute different aspects of the spec in a very self-contained, right? We can have like focused conversation on some aspect of the spec and make it easier to progress.
Okay. Now I definitely understand the main point that wasn't clear. I mean, I still have to enter well on the logic of the product, which is metadata extraction and not data lineage construction. And yes, of course, then you needed to have a bucket to put additional metadata and non-standard metadata. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I was just gonna say, Julian, thanks for that. Thanks for the definition of facets. That's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, the open lineage website, and there's a doc website as well. I thank you, Ross, and others who've been contributing to this, as pages that describe some of these aspects as well. But we're working on making it better.
yeah, and we'd love contributions, and we'll follow up on Slack and look forward to conversing there more. I think. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bruno, for coming. It's good to meet you and hope to see you at a future meeting, and all of you too.
It'll be a
Have a great
pleasure.
rest of your day.
All right.
Thanks, Michael. Great meeting.
Bye
Bye, you all.
good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Good
Ciao.
day.
Bonne nuit.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bonne nuit, Julien. Bye.
Bye.